everybody. Welcome to Paris and to the inaugural Paris Air Mobility. I'm Juliette True, and I'm VP of Business Development for the events portfolio at Aviation Week Network. We're delighted to launch this unique event, which is being produced by ourselves and the airshow team. We're looking forward to 3 days of high-level content delving into the entire advanced air mobility ecosystem. We have an amazing lineup of speakers for you who will be providing analysis and insight into the current state of the AAM market and how to drive the industry forward, plus giving their thought leadership on the key challenges and opportunities facing the sector. The agenda is split over 3 days with 3 different themes. Today we're going to be focusing on manufacturing and certification. We're going to kick off with Sergio, examining the critical trends and future forecasts of the industry. We then hear from all the key CEOs at the manufacturers before moving into 2 panel discussions, one focused on the regulatory environment and one on the latest innovations and emerging technologies. And then we close out today with a session from Maglev Aero on their plans for a new generation of propulsion technology. Tomorrow, we're looking at infrastructure and the AAM ecosystem, airspace requirements and workforce challenges. And on Thursday, we're going to really focus on enabling operations with a range of case studies from those companies on the pathway to commercialization. So please mark all the sessions of interest in your diary and make sure you're here to listen to our stellar lineup of speakers. We hope that the event can be interactive and lively over the next few days, so we encourage you to ask questions. We're going to be using Slido for this, so you can ask questions from your mobile devices. If you go to slido.com and enter the hashtag PASAM, you can ask questions that way, and the QR code is up on the screen now. We'd also like to take this opportunity to remind you of the Advanced Air Mobility Report produced by Aviation Week Network. This is a weekly newsletter that provides insights and analysis covering the full spectrum of this market, and its managing editor, Ben Goldstein, will be on stage moderating some of the sessions over the next few days. We've also got all of our show news coverage on the Paris Air Show app, so you can also download that as well. And it's now my pleasure to hand over to Sergio Secutta for our opening presentation, looking at the future of air mobility. Sergio is a partner and co-founder at SMG Consulting, an aerospace defense and auto tech consulting firm, where he leads the advanced air mobility practice and he oversees product, strategy, market analysis, and business development for a diverse client portfolio. He's been part of the AAM industry since its early days, and he's spearheaded multiple research projects and helped clients understand the market. So please welcome Sergio.
Well, good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm very shy, so no, I'm joking. So I know you guys came for the CEO panel, so you have to just bear with me for 20 minutes, and then you get the CEOs. So, great event. Appreciate you guys sitting here. What we want to do today in these 20 minutes is a little bit guide you through the state of the industry. So it's not going to be like, something you haven't seen before. And my philosophy is if I get bored, you get bored. So smile to my jokes, please. So you know that there is a lot of aircraft that are being developed, right? And advanced air mobility, I call it none of the above. I don't know if you saw, there used to be a movie, it was funny, and it says, who do you vote for? None of the above. And this is, what is advanced air mobility? It's nothing that we do today in aerospace. So none of the above. And you can see they take a lot of different configuration, et cetera, et cetera. So for my first slide, every slide there's a funny title and a serious title. So when it comes to show me the money, so how big is this market? And we can, hold on. Okay, there you go. Okay, so we can start with a few different predictions, right? So PricewaterhouseCoopers, 61 billion in 2030. Deloitte, 115 billion in 2035. Seems like an auction. Who offers more? 1 trillion. Morgan Stanley in 2040. A lot of people always ask, can you predict the size of the market? My crystal ball is broken. And so how big it is? It's big. Okay, I leave the other folks to do this. It's a big market. Don't know if anyone wants to, miss it. So now, with this out of the way, because I know you would ask, and this is not about the presentation, let's start. So one of the things we've seen this year, it's a lot of, and in the last year, it's a lot of delays to the timelines, right? I will let you read through them. Everyone is basically getting a little bit delayed, right? And why? Because it's complex. And how complex it is. So if you look at this map with a little airplane, what you see here is most of the advanced air mobility OEMs that are here at the show. And you can see how they're spread when it comes to their development. So the way that we look at it is you got first subcomponent testing, right? So that's what 4 of the OEMs are there. By the way, there's 15 if you don't want to count, because I know it's 9 in the morning. The next one is going to be subscale prototypes. Okay, and again, what is a subscale prototype? Something that fits on this desk or something that fits on an airport. As long as it's not 100%, it's smaller. So we got 6 here. The next one is going to be full scale. Right? So a lot of this stuff is eVTOL, unsteady aerodynamics. They don't scale linearly. The closer you get to the size of the aircraft, the better it is. And here we got 3. And then the last 2 pieces. So this one, we call them pre-production, right? So these are basically, looks like the conforming aircraft, but not there yet. Maybe it's not produced on a line that will be certified. Maybe there is a little bit of adjustment that need to be made. And we got 1. And then last but not least, it's the conforming aircraft. Okay, no conforming with another name next to it. Conforming, period. And this is basically the aircraft you're going to certify with your regulator. And we have 1. So now, I know that there is a lot of OEMs here, and they will say, well, but at the end of the year, we're going to be better. Okay. So that makes the little eVTOL fly. Woo! So this is the progress that we see towards the end of the year. So some of these eVTOLs are going to progress. Some of these eVTOL are going to get close to certification. And so how does it look like? 4, we had 4 before. We had 6, now we're 4. And you can see that the reason is we're getting more and more aircraft towards certification. So hardware, it's not easy, right? There is no beta in hardware when it's safety and flight safety critical. And so it takes a lot more time. So now, one of the things is we have set some very optimistic timeline. I wouldn't call them unrealistic. Okay, let's take the positive view that we meant it. We just didn't know it. But if you see, the dark lines is what was announced, and now the lighter lines is where we are today. And so anytime a timeline stretches, the other part that we need to consider is how far, much more do we have left, right? And so now there is certification. So let's take, we call it year 1, year 2, year 3, right? We don't know when. Just put a year you want. So you have a conforming aircraft. Okay, so now you got to do these flight tests with the conforming aircraft. Usually, in aerospace, 12 to 18 months is like the mother of all perfect flight tests. Everything goes well. So 12 to 18 months, now we're in the middle of year 2. And then, once you're certified, that's not it. I mean, number 1, you got to close your certification documents, of which, if you ever seen the certification document, it's a lot. And the second part is you need to do route-proving flights. You can just say, oh, tomorrow I'm going to carry passengers, right? So the advantage of this airplane, short range, so your route-proving flight, it's not like flying from Toulouse to Sydney, so quicker. And this is where you are going to get your entry into service. So you apply this timeline to the eVTOL of your choice, and it's an interesting conversation to have about when these airplanes can be certified. Now, the other issue is money. If you care to read through all of those numbers, the top 28 OEMs that we follow, $9 to $10 billion, right? Most of it in the last few years. However, as a lot of people like to point to me, it really doesn't matter how much money you have, it's how much money you have left. Okay, so let's look how much money we have left. Now, we're not going to pick on these 5 OEMs, but deciding to go public made them easy to pick on. And it's because we actually have financials every single month. So if you look at how much cash has been burned, and by the way, this takes into account any last rounding of finances, any announced money that is going to come, it will become, but it's committed, et cetera, et cetera. So you see that the cash reserves are going down, and some OEMs have to go back to the market. Now, the whole idea of a spec is a little bit like an IPO. That should be all the money you need to get where you need to go. Going back to the market to ask for more money, it's not the most ideal thing. But at the same time, again, hardware, it's not easy. And so if we look at the top 15 OEMs, really, we need another $2.5 to $4 billion. And now, don't forget that we make many generalizations in advanced air mobility. It takes $1 billion to certify any VTOL. Well, it depends. It's all after if you have $2 billion, it's enough. Well, it depends if you want to operate them. And then you need a lot more money because instead of taking home $4 million an airplane, you're taking home $300 a ticket, et cetera, et cetera. So now, one of the other issues is each one of the regulators decide to follow his own path. So why can we be friends, right? That's a catchy song. So once in a while, the clicker doesn't like me. Hold on. I'm trying to convince. There you go. OK, so we have EASA. We know SC VTOL, DAL level A. If you're not familiar with what's DAL level A, it's the level of safety. We always say 1 billion hours. It's funny. And everyone asks why it's 10 to the minus 9. It's because it's one fault in 1 billion hours, so it's the denominator. What about the FAA? The FAA decided to go with power lift, and with this safety continuum where the design assurance level changes according to the vehicle type, right? So how many passengers you have, what's the operations that you do, et cetera, et cetera. And last but not least, not to make it any more complicated, we also have China that is going to be a veritable large market in their own. And one of the things about this market is they're actually creating their own regulation. And they're not following EASA nor FAA. And so what we know is that the DAL level is going to be different for UAV and for passenger aircraft. Opening that onion more, we don't know yet. So one of the great things of aerospace is that our products are worldwide, right? We don't make an A320 for Europe, then an A320 for the US, and then an A320 for China. So harmonization, it's very important. And this is because certifying aircraft, it's extremely expensive. So what happened? We couldn't agree. And sorry that the A and the T are close to each other. They like each other. So they couldn't agree on a certification schedule, on a certification regulation. And so now what we're talking about is moving past the differences to harmonization. So we're not trying anymore. It's a little bit like we agree to disagree. So how we can make sure that if you certify with EASA, you can bring it to the United States, et cetera, as well as China. So it's one of the issues that's out there. It is not nice for the poor OEMs. That really, it's a little bit like they're playing the games and they're writing the rules. So for the European, you don't know if it's offsite. For the American, you don't know if you're roughing the passer. Who knows? So now, this looks like an enormous watermelon. It's actually a big circle. And the reason it's like this, it's because there is a tiny little circle that would have been so teeny tiny you wouldn't have been able to see it. So this is the money that has gone to the top 13 AAM OEMs that we follow, $7.5 billion. And these teeny tiny little things is the money that has gone to the top 13 infrastructure companies, So 62 times less. Now, that's a very good point, right? Infrastructure, it's not a sexy business. Venture capital doesn't like to be told that they will make their money back in 20 years at 2%, because that kind of, yeah. So there is a discrepancy, and is the infrastructure ready? And so if you look, there is 578 cities in the world as of this year that have over 1 million people. So let's say that these are the trouble cities, okay? And we start with 4 cities over 20 million and 400 over between 1 and 3 million. So if you take all of those cities and you do some assumptions for how many aircraft you want to operate in each city, how many vertiports you need in each city, you get to the point where you need at least 3 OEMs to serve that market, but you need 12 vertiport companies to serve that market. Now, this is very unscientific, okay? So don't come and say, oh my God, there's only going to be 3 OEMs left. It's a minimum that we need to have there. But so there is an opportunity infrastructure, but it is extremely underinvested. And yes, at the very beginning, we're going to use infrastructure that already exists. We have our heliports, we have our airports, et cetera, et cetera. But remember that different from flying an airplane, when you can go solo and have a route, in order to do a route with vertiports, you need company. You mean, unless you want to go and do a little touristic flight, you need a place to go. And so you need 2 of them. And especially if you want to connect downtown, you need to put something in downtown. And you know that that's not easy. Real estate is extremely expensive, it's extremely limited. Let's not talk about the airspace. So now, if you've seen Lord of the Ring, right? 1 ring to rule them all. So I said 1 use case is to rule them all, right? So the question is, let's say there's 3 big use cases, right? Urban air mobility, regional air mobility, and cargo. And so I wanted to go through these, and I know that this looks so engineering, but bear with me. It's reminiscing to the days of youth. So when you look at this table, let's look a little bit of few dimension, right? So right now we know that urban air mobility is where the majority of the focus is, right? We're all talking, and if you look around, you're surrounded by air taxis, right? And a regional over there. So demand. So we talk about pull demand versus push demand. This very cryptic way of saying is, are there customers out there asking, claiming, clamoring for this service? In regional, yeah. I mean, if you can get me, to another airport, I can go, sure. How about cargo? Isn't it disappointing when Amazon tells you that you have to wait 1.5 whole day to get your yoga mat? Right? You want it now. I just thought about it. I want to start yoga. Then you put it there, you roll it up, and it goes into the closet. So the other part is what we call push demand. And so it's a demand that doesn't exist, but we think it's going to be there. And this is the case for urban air mobility, right? No one of us has gone to our mayors and said, I want to fly. Even if you've been stuck in traffic, it doesn't matter where you live, you wish you could fly, right? Unless you got podcasts like me, and then you're happy. You're like, whatever, at least I'm listening. Now, market share, right? So if you look at, and by the way, red and green, it's not to say good and bad, it's just to say big and small. So for most of these numbers. So the market share in 2030, it's a market that's going to be dominated by cargo and regional air mobility with urban air mobility. In 2040, everything flips. Why? Urban air mobility is the piece with the most promise. However, it's also the most complex of all the pieces to introduce, right? So it's a little bit like we're building the bus, the freeway, the bus stop, all at the same time, right? If we do regional, the airports are there. In the US, for sure. In Europe, hopefully. In Asia, it's a little more complicated. And cargo is cargo. And if you have ever seen a warehouse of Amazon, you know that they're big. So there is one part of LA that's all warehouses, and we were flying, and I was like, oh, look, we're so low. Look how big is that building. Oh, no, the cargo is this small. It's the warehouse that's big. And if you hear that the biggest building in the world is the Everett production line at Boeing, I invite you to go into an Amazon warehouse. It doesn't have airplanes, but it's got a lot of stuff inside. And by the way, it's all robotic, so there's humans only pack stuff. There's machines that go get it. EIS timing, more or less, it's all the same, right? And I know that you're saying, urban air mobility, well, there is 2023, so when it comes to e-hang, we classify e-hang as tourism, not air taxi. So that's why you don't see it there. And when it comes to cargo, know that there is a lot of cargo aircraft that are going to be certified in China for transportation of goods at the end of the year. Now, the certification risk. I know it really depends on platforms, but the majority of the urban air mobility platforms are eVTOL platforms with electric motor and distributed propulsion. So you're going to make them more complicated? Oh, no, wait. We're going to talk to Mr. Brian from Wisk that said, no, let's do autonomy too, because it's not easy enough. And so, and I know I will get grilled by this later. How about the investment? So you can see the majority of the money has gone to urban air mobility. And when you see ARI, it's the AM Reality Index. We can just look at everyone. Now, when you look at the OEM targeting the market, the majority of the OEMs are targeting urban air mobility. However, if you look at the extended market, so in the AM Reality Index, we only track 28 OEMs, but we're actually looking at over 70 different OEMs. And if you look at these extended family of OEMs, you see how the picture shifts. More and more people are looking at the regional air mobility. When it comes to propulsion, I mean, it's kind of easy. Why is electric propulsion the preferred way of flying urban air mobility? Because it works. Always remember, this is one thing that I always remember. Battery, 250 watt-hour per kilogram. Jet A, 12,000 watt-hour per kilogram. And I know many of you say Jet A is inefficient. Fine, cut it in half, 6,000. 6,000, it's a lot bigger than 250, right? So we don't need progress in technology development on batteries. We need leaps to be able to do the same things. And you see hybrid is also more and more something that people are considering. Why? In regional air mobility, it gives you range. And it gives you something that we've been playing with airplanes forever, but we cannot do with electric airplanes. That is trading payload for range. So now a lot of people will say, no, you can. You just carry less people. Yeah, but you cannot go further. You're still more or less going the same distance. And then last but not least, infrastructure availability. And I know that at the very beginning, we're going to operate out of existing infrastructure. But it's still, if we don't, this is not the beginning. We're looking at the end state, and the end state is very different. So UAM demand centers on customer acceptance, right? And it's kind of like the diametric opposite of cargo. Packages don't get a say. They just get loaded. That's it. Oops, sorry. OK, I can do this. Cargo, it's the most immediate use case out there. And this is one of the reasons why if you look at the presentation from any of the OEMs, in a long time ago, like 2020, you would see that it was all about air taxi. And now many slides have got EMS, and they got cargo. Why? Because we want to have more missions. UAM is for sure the long-term win. We're not trying to say here UAM is bad. No, UAM is awesome. It's just in order to get to when the market is promising, you got to survive a long time. RAM, why do we say certification is easy? Because a lot of the vehicles are eVTOL. And really, if you think about it, eVTOL is the easiest way to make an electric aircraft today. OK, we'll go into more detail. The fastest growing market, it's actually the most underfunded, and that's cargo. Not many companies are doing cargo. And again, yes, cargo is the second mission. It's not the same as doing cargo. With jokingly, when I talk to the beta guy, I always tell them that it's an Amazon truck that flies. Pretty ones, like the Rivian, OK? No, not the ugly ones. But at the same time, you want to have something that is boring in shape. Because packages happen to be boring in shape, and they all look the same. And if you have opened your Amazon packages, you know that there is nothing inside but air. Now, the other part is, if you look at the latest announcement, and this is one thing that actually got my attention, is more and more of the announcements are pointing toward regional air mobility. And I know that someone in the audience is smiling. I know. And again, it's something that is out there, and it's really a low-hanging fruit. And if you look, 76% of destinations have lost air service in the last 2 years. And the thing that resonates with me is when a city whose name I know doesn't have airplane service anymore, that's a big deal. So for many of you, Ogden in Utah might not be a familiar name, but for us in the US, we know it's a big city in Utah. There is no more air service. That means these poor people have to drive. Hybrid, we talked about the advantage there, and also for UAM to reach its maximum success, we are also looking at infrastructure. So really, if we, and I know that I have a panel with 4 UAM OEMs, and so it's kind of like interesting that I'm going to tell you that we like wings, we like runways, and we like hybrid, because that's the way that you make your battery go the longest. So with 2 minutes to go, I don't want to bore you, but we want to say goodbye to Paris, and see you next year. Well, thank you, guys.